Denver's plan to cut migrant services starts in Aurora. Some city leaders there say they didn't even know they had services left to cut.
To hear that they're now closing a migrant shelter in Aurora is pretty laughable.
The only thing less surprising than the long wait at the Denver airport is airport officials asking for millions to fix it. And if you're looking for a deep discount on Russell Wilson gear, don't look here.
You got to make sure you have your finger on the pulse.
Some Broncos stores say they saw the writing on the wall and stopped stocking up long ago. And domestic violence survivors have one place to turn in Weld County. We can help them get there and on to whatever comes after, because this is next. Denver's plan to close migrant shelters around the city begins by closing a hotel in Aurora. It's the same hotel Mayor Mike Johnston vowed to stop using 3 months ago after Denver displaced people living there who were homeless in favor of housing migrants. For nearly 4 months, this Quality Inn in Aurora sheltered migrants in rooms rented out by the city of Denver. It's a hotel Denver said it would stop using months ago.
I don't think it's fair at all.
Back in December, we introduced you to Joe Swaceta.
At all, because where do I go?
He lived at the Quality Inn before he was pushed into homelessness when the city of Denver rented out all the rooms for migrants.
Why are they pushing us out?
After Joe shared his story, Denver reversed course. Joe was allowed to go back to the hotel, and Denver said it would stop sending migrants to Aurora. Individuals sheltered there were given 14 days to stay. Families had 37 days. After that, the mayor of Aurora said on a radio show in December that Denver agreed to come pick everyone up.
And that they would pick up the people that are here when their vouchers expire.
Turns out, Denver kept housing migrants in Aurora for 85 more days.
I feel deceived and I feel somewhat in the dark. What are they really doing in Denver? What are they doing?
Aurora Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky says she was never told the plan was to house migrants for an additional 3 months. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman's team says he was notified.
I haven't heard a word about it. All Mayor Johnson has supposedly communicated to Mayor Kaufman is that nobody else will be bussed into Aurora.
While Denver says they didn't bus any new migrants into Aurora, they did put a pause on pushing families out of shelters from November to February. That allowed families to stay in hotels indefinitely. When that expired, Denver started periodically discharging migrant families from the shelter system, which leads us to this week.
We will, over the next month, close 4 of our migrant shelters.
Only 6 people were left at the Quality Inn when the shelter shut down yesterday. Now, as far as we know, Denver is no longer sheltering any migrants in Aurora. Denver's plan to move as many people as possible out of city-run shelters seems to be working right now. The number of migrants currently being sheltered is now below 2,000 for the first time since November. In the middle of all this, Aurora City Council also passed a resolution aimed at preventing migrants from coming to the city. More than anything, though, that is symbolic. As communities across Colorado try and craft rules to keep migrants out of their cities, they keep running into the same problem. City attorneys and law enforcement say it's probably not legal. Rio Blanco County in western Colorado is the latest community to try and roll up the welcome mat. Late last week, county commissioners unanimously passed a resolution declaring they're not a sanctuary city and opposing the support of, quote, undocumented, illegal, and/or uninvited migrants. Commissioners wanted to go farther, like giving local law enforcement the power to take migrants out of town or arrest illegal immigrants, but they say their district attorney and sheriff's office told them that's a federal issue. City councilors in Aurora and Colorado Springs have already passed resolutions declaring themselves non-sanctuary cities, even after city attorneys in both locations said the resolutions are likely non-enforceable. When things run smoothly at DIA, we don't necessarily report on it. You don't hear it on shows like this. Kind of like expecting kudos for doing the basics of your job. But when delays happen and passengers and bags start missing flights, you definitely hear about it and you feel it as well. So today, the airport CEO briefed members of City Council on possible solutions. Our Marshall Zellender live at the airport. Marshall, maybe we should just stop and send you home because it looks behind you like things are running kind of smooth. It doesn't look like news is going on right now.
Well, I mean, kind of like Colorado's weather, wait 10 minutes and maybe we'll have a different story here. The most recent issue here at DIA was a software glitch over the weekend that caused bags, a couple thousand of them, to not make the flights with the passengers that brought the bags. But Early last week, the problem is where I was standing, where there were long security waits at these brand new security lines, and this is the longest wait we've seen so far. Just a few hours ago, Airport CEO Phil Washington updated members of City Council on some of the solutions he has for some current issues.
In many ways, we are rebuilding this airport.
That's not a surprise to any traveler through DIA since the summer of 2018, when construction on the Great Hall began. That project to move security screening to the upper level finally saw one of the security areas moved to the upper level. But just like when it was down below, security wait times are contingent on TSA staffing the lines.
We do not control TSA, as you know. However, we are working with them to hopefully increase the TSA headcount at DEN.
After his presentation to members of City Council today, DIA CEO Phil Washington told me TSA staffs the airport with 941 agents. In 2019, with fewer passengers, it was more than 1,000 agents. Can you withhold any funding? Like, I don't know how much you pay TSA, but can you withhold anything and be like, we're serious?
No. Tough love is, explaining to TSA the impact of short staff is for our airport. When we have delays in Denver, it impacts the entire country.
Washington also updated the council on this weekend's baggage delays caused by a software problem, which led to an interesting question from Councilwoman Chantel Lewis.
I'm curious if the folks whose flight left and their bags didn't, do you all pay for those bags to be delivered to those individuals once they get to that destination?
We work with the airlines. It sort of depends, but we work with them and engage with them. It's a case-by-case basis.
Hang on, case by case? That suggests DIA has paid for baggage delays. That requires a follow-up. You said it's case by case, but has DIA ever paid for someone's bag not making it to their destination?
Not to my knowledge.
That's why you always follow up. Maybe, Mark, we should do more stories like this when there is no line, because we do so many stories when the line exists here. One other update Washington gave to the members of the City Council is that as DIA reaches 100 million passengers, he wants to expand the number of cars that can take passengers between the concourses. So instead of 4 entrances into the train, he wants to build a 5th and 6th door. But mind you, that would take construction, and I've been told that the airport is not under perpetual construction.
It's definitely not under perpetual construction. Anybody who's flown out of there would know that. Marshall, when you see someone like Phil Washington in front of City Council answering those questions to those people, you think about all the other conversations that have been had in that room recently, and a lot of them involve budget cuts. Will DIA have to cut its budget?
No. And we've answered this question several times over the years, that DIA spends money, generated money at DIA. And so they do not have to cut any of their budget because they're spending money that does not affect the rest of the city, and they don't get money from the rest of the city. All the City Council does is basically approve writing the check that DIA is asking for. It's DIA's account, and City Council is the parent that has to write the check.
Interesting. DIA actually looking pretty good right there. Marshall, thank you. When people in Weld County need to leave abusive situations, there's really only one organization they can turn to locally. This week, we have the opportunity to help those survivors take those first steps toward a new future. Kyle's on the road today with more on this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign.
A Woman's Place is the only domestic violence safe house in Weld County, an area that geographically is almost as large as the state of Connecticut. And that nonprofit serves that diverse community with a staff that speaks 7 languages. Our Word of Thanks microgiving campaign this week supports that nonprofit, working to keep domestic violence survivors and their families safe. That begins with the essentials, giving people a plan to get out safely, a place where they can stay free of fear and violence, a way to take care of their kids. And then it's long-term needs, walking with them through the court system and eventually helping them find a new place to live. That's where we come in. No one wants to start over with nothing. So A Woman's Place helps survivors start out with the household essentials that they will need to rebuild their lives. It's the basics. It's bed sheets and it's kitchen items, things like that. But there's an expense to setting each new survivor and their family up with those items. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303 871-1491 to join me and others in giving to A Woman's Place. I'll never ask you to give to a cause I don't support myself, so as always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5. A Woman's Place does crucial work, saving lives in Weld County and then helping to rebuild lives for the long run.
Look, we have these rec center cuts. They're really troubling. Is there any way we could potentially delay pickleball courts?
Spending millions on pickleball courts as the city announces major cuts to park and rec? Yeah, we had questions too. And there are two kinds of stores, the kind of store discounting tons of Russell Wilson gear and the kind of store that stopped selling it a long time ago. That's next. State regulators are putting Suncor's Commerce City refinery on notice. The refinery has about 3 years to drastically cut the amount of toxic chemicals they're releasing into nearby water sources. The state health department announced a new water quality permit for Suncor today. For the first time, it'll limit the levels of PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, that Suncor can release into Sand Creek that runs nearby. The permit also requires Suncor to limit releases of other toxic chemicals like benzene and arsenic and send TETS notifications whenever spills occur. Kathy's here with the weather tonight. Kathy, it was a beautiful day today, and all of a sudden you're telling me things are changing?
I know. It felt like spring, right?
It was beautiful. It was the day that you just want to be outside.
Spring arrives on the 19th. The vernal equinox is on the 19th, so circle it on your calendar.
I'm ready.
We're almost
We're
there.
all ready.
But first, Mark, we got to get through a little thing called rain, snow, and colder weather. And that will be your Thursday and Friday. Clouds are already rolling in, but notice the evening drive, not bad, not too impactful. The cloud cover and even the light sprinkles around the area. It's kind of a pretty evening. Snow is going to begin to pick up in the high country tonight with winter weather and travel advisories going out. Denver just has isolated rain showers this evening. Tomorrow we have rain in the afternoon, changing to snow late in the day into the overnight period with all the advisories for travel and snow in the mountains. Our high at 61 is a good 10 degrees above average. Will be a whole lot cooler tomorrow. The winds are coming in ahead of a storm system that's approaching us from California, but there's also a front to the north that will provide a reinforcing shot of cold air, and that will help to kind of ramp up the snow overnight tonight into tomorrow. A winter storm watch for the Front Range foothills for 6 to 12 inches of snow, an icy glaze possible in northeastern Colorado, and some of the heavier snow in southern Colorado in the winter storm warning area for like the wet mountain range. Tonight, we've got this progressive flow with a bit of rain out east. Denver's going to see some rain showers tomorrow mixing with snow for the evening drive. That's when we get into the accumulation is tomorrow night. 1 to 3 inches overnight tomorrow night, but it's out of here by Friday afternoon. So it's a quick moving storm system and you're looking at about 1 to 3 inches of snow here. And then as we kind of look ahead to the next few days, temperatures are going to be relatively comfortable tonight, a whole lot cooler moving into your Thursday and downright cold on Friday. But your weekend looks fabulous, Mark. And don't forget, daylight saving time begins. Set those clocks ahead 1 hour.
We actually don't have anything on the sales floor right now.
Jerseys used to be a hot commodity. Now some shops are having a fire sale to get them out the door. And Denver Parks and Rec says despite major budget cuts, they've got a few million in the bank. So why not spend it on pickleball? Don't call it overdramatic. This is important news. Time to break out the Fox News style graphics. Tonight we have new developments in Denver's war on pickleball. Denver Parks and Rec wants to devote $2 million to building new pickleball courts at Rosamond Park, citing a, quote, critical service gap after the city shut down courts at Eisenhower Park and Sloan's Lake last year. For those keeping track at home, yes, this is the same Parks and Rec department currently cutting rec center hours and summer hours to help offset spending on the migrant crisis.
When I saw this coming through, was sort of pinging for colleagues like, look, we have these rec center cuts. They're really troubling. Is there any way we could potentially delay pickleball courts?
When you look at what can be repositioned to fill other holes in the city as we have this humanitarian crisis happening, and then when you look at what funds could be used to fill the holes that that is creating in Parks and Recreation, the funds that we're talking about today are not funds that can be used to do either of those things. And so
let's calm your nerves here a little bit. Parks and Rec Director Jolan Clark, who you just heard from there, says the funding is being reallocated after planned improvements to Civic Center Park were delayed. That funding comes from the voter-approved Parks and Legacy Fund, which can only be used for specific purposes like construction and park improvements. That money, he says, could not be used to help migrants. Remember when Russell Wilson was telling us, hey, Broncos country, let's ride? And now we're kind of like, actually, maybe let's hide? Since the Broncos announced they were cutting Wilson, It's a pretty good time to get a discount on a number 3 jersey. May we recommend this Kin Supers in Erie. 90% off a number 3 jersey. And don't get your hopes up, Broncos fans. The sale doesn't extend to any other gear. Check the sign, Russell Wilson only. Or the Hallmark store in Aspen Grove. They're selling their last Russell Wilson Christmas ornament. That's sad. For a deep discount. Guess they aren't exactly flying off the shelves right now. But then there are other people who saw this coming from a mile away. People who predicted a long time ago that Russell Wilson's house has more bathrooms than he would ever have wins as a Bronco. Our Brian Wendland met a jersey seller who says he stopped stocking up a long time ago.
The sports fan just up the street from Mile High Stadium has everything a Broncos fan needs for game day. Jerseys, t-shirts, hats, but one thing you won't find? Russell Wilson merchandise.
I feel, bad for Russell because I think everyone wanted that to work out.
Derek Friedman is a fan, but he's also a businessman. And as the owner of this shop, he knew he couldn't keep ordering jerseys for a player who might not be around much longer.
We were managing our inventory last year and managed it down to a point where we actually don't have anything on the sales floor right now.
No number 3 fire sales here.
You got to make sure you have your finger on the pulse.
While he thinks it's a bummer the Russ situation didn't work out, Friedman is happy the Broncos didn't wait around to cut ties. Back when the team was on its 5-game win streak, he placed an order with Nike.
So we had a ton of jerseys that were on order for May and then again in July.
But Nike canceled that order after the team told the world that Russ wouldn't be riding with Broncos country anymore. No delivery meant Friedman was off the hook.
Now, if he would have been released after we would have received those jerseys, then we're in a little bit of trouble.
There are always trades that can't be planned for, like Von Miller and Bradley Chubb.
And in that case, folks who are still fans of those players win because we cut the price in half.
But there's also always next season. Specifically jersey sales next season for whoever the Broncos decide to draft in the first round.
What we hope is that they have a great player who lasts a long time, and if it is a quarterback, then yes, we'll sell a ton of jerseys.
For Next, I'm Brian Wendland.
For those wondering at home, we did the math. He's got 12 bathrooms in his Cherry Hills home, 11 wins as a Bronco. Marissa, thank you for the feedback.
This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports A Woman's Place, the nonprofit that is the only domestic violence safe house in all of Weld County. They've served that area for decades, but they're anticipating a significant reduction in federal victim services funding, and they're looking for ways to meet those gaps in their budget. Where we're coming in to help this week is in the Life Restart kits that they provide for domestic violence survivors and their families, the essentials that they will need to go out and start a new life in a new apartment, a place to live in town, a place that's safe for their family. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 or scan that QR code on your screen to get the link to join me and others in supporting A Woman's Place in Weld County.
Some feedback for you tonight to end the show from Brenda. She says, can you tell Marshall that he should call it DEN, not DIA? I think I know why Marshall calls it DIA. It's the same reason I still call it DIA. Both Marshall and I grew up in Denver, and growing up here, it was DIA. We still just call it DIA. Almost everybody who grew up here still calls it DIA. Kind of like I still call it the Pepsi Center sometimes, Mile High. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch for all you native Coloradans. We'll see you next time.